Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I have Jon McLaughlin coming out of the Southwest part of the States, and he's got a very interesting background. He's a business acquirer, and he's also traveled the world twice via backpack, and he's a private pilot. So I'm really happy to have him on and showcase his business, his brand, and he's got short stints at in finance and private equity, and really happy to have him on. Jon, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Briefly chronicle your journey and we'll dive into the work that you're doing currently.
Yeah, thanks. So I was born in San Jose, Costa Rica. I grew up in an interesting place, I would say. I didn't fully appreciate it until now. Growing up in a third world country gave me a different perspective. And did my undergrad in New York, worked in finance in New York and London, and then ultimately left finance and did my first time around backpacking around the world. I was one of those guys that sold all their stuff in my New York apartment, sold it, and went to Nepal. I call it my Batman Begins year. And just when I came back, I had trouble getting a job. I wanted to get a job in a startup, but no one would have me. They were like, "You work in finance, you're not startup material." So I went to business school, which was a great opportunity in the Midwest. And I realized in many ways I'm a Midwesterner and in Indiana. And from there, had an opportunity to link up with a private equity operator, and we were turning around businesses that were in challenging situations, mostly in government services and aviation, and was a unique experience. Got to learn a lot, right, working in challenging situations, and then out of that, founded a small fund where we acquire businesses and develop them in interesting thematic, we call it thematic opportunities. We've done a couple so far, and it's mostly quality over quantity, right? A lot of folks in our space, we call them empire builders. They're just trying to buy a bunch of stuff and do deals, and that's not us. We were really trying to find unique opportunities that are overlooked or hiding in plain sight, as we like to see. We did one in 2021 called Interra, which is a leader in wildfire data and dissemination for first responders and for cities as well, public safety. And then we've done another one in aviation maintenance software, which is called TBX, was the name of the platform. And I stepped in to run that for now. And it's been a really rewarding experience to go from the, what I'll call it, the board level and the investor level down into the trenches and help develop and build what we see as a really fast growing opportunity in aviation safety, right? I think this year we've seen a record number of deaths of crashes in the start of the year with that crash in DC. So it's been an interesting opportunity there. And for the most part, it's been very rewarding to work in these smaller, underappreciated opportunities that we like to say are too small for PE and too niche for VC, right? It's this no man's land of companies that have a lot of potential, but no one wants to give them the love and attention because there's just bigger deals out there where it's just easier for people to get that over the finish line.
Yeah. Very interesting. So we'll talk about for the audience and listeners that want to learn more from you and connect with you, what do people come to you for? What are they searching for? What are they running away from to learn from you and connect with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So there's a couple of personas that I tend to encounter. One is the business owner that wants to transition out of their business or to transition out of their business, and they want to get it ready for the right change of passage, if you will, succession planning. And I end up helping them almost like a friend. I don't necessarily, we don't acquire every business, but we can help them. Here are the 3 things you can do to get your business ready for sale for a guy like me. So I have a lot of those conversations. The other conversation that's similar but different is the company that wants to grow, but is like the owner's doing too much. They're having problem prioritizing. How do we put in the right systems, right? If you're a business owner that is coming up against just not enough hours in the day, doing too much, I can really help there for folks understand where the problems are and give you a perspective on how to fix that. And I would say the third is the young upstart that is looking to buy their first business. I end up mentoring, if you will, 2 or 3 a year and helping them through that process of finding a thesis. Okay, you want to buy a business? Don't just buy any business, find something that you're passionate about. Okay, once we get that out of the way, here's how you go and find those businesses in your passion area, because business is hard. If you don't have passion, you'll die because it'll kill you. There's too much stuff going on, and if you're not passionate about it, you'll give up. So how do we create structures around that for you? So it's the young upstart finding a business, negotiating and working with a potential seller, closing that business, finding investors, and then running the business, right? The whole soup to nuts. So I'm fortunate to have a couple of upstarts that are in my earlier days, and I have a few ahead of me that sort of coached me that have bought and sold 5 to 10, 15 businesses or whatever that I go to. I'd say those are the three types of folks that I tend to work with almost on a side gig capacity, if you will, as just helping out.
Interesting. Yeah, and you're we'll talk about aviation data group, and then that's a SaaS business, and you also have acquiring and fixing businesses, the Emberline portfolio. What's interesting is talking about the evolution of business strategy since 1900s. We'll talk about what your experience has been.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I had an opportunity to teach a class as an adjunct professor, and if for anyone out there who has knowledge or is reflective and has put stuff into concepts and frameworks, I encourage you to go to your local university and talk to the school dean or whatever to see if you can teach a class. And the way that it happened for me was I wanted to teach that class, but they don't just let you teach any class out the gate. They test you out with giving you someone goes on sabbatical and they have they need a substitute teacher, and you start as like a sub almost. And if you do well in your subbing projects for the intro to finance 101 or whatever, eventually you can ask to teach your own class. And it's a lot of work because you're creating a syllabus, you're creating a coursework, you're creating a concept. So that class was one in which, if you look at the history of business, what happened to me was when I left MBA, my first job out there, I had all my frameworks and my PowerPoints and whatnot. And when you try to implement them, it basically everything failed because life doesn't work that way. And what they teach you in business school is very much the dogma, to use a Steve Jobs quote. And you don't really get the experience that you need until you're in the real world. It's like traveling, right? You can see who hasn't traveled a lot because they have too much stuff on the trail. They're carrying like 60 pounds of stuff they don't need, and you can tell who's a professional and who's been on the road a long time because they're really lean, they have all these hacks, and they know how to do it. It's the same thing with business. And I was very curious about this, so I studied the history of consulting since the early days in the history of business. And if you chart the trajectory, it's one in which we came from a world in the early 1900s where everything was very predictable. You knew your costs, you knew how much you were going to sell. It was almost like a regulated market, very much like government services is today. And then it's to morph in the 70s as things started to get deregulated and then the training wheels came off, if you will. And then we entered a world where things were changing really fast and you had to be flexible and adapt. So I thought it was an interesting way to teach a cohort of students at graduate level all the frameworks from 1900 to today and how business evolved over that time, because it allows you to analyze these things in a way that isn't dogma, where you're like, oh, Porter's 5 forces works like this because that was what it was like in this time in the world. And then, oh, the business model canvas or the Steve Blank sort of customer discovery or the fast pivot works today for these reasons in these types of markets. And that class is going through all the frameworks with exercises. To give you an example, we mapped out in Portland all of the pizza shops on a competitive framework on a 2x2 that Michael Porter would have loved. A really awesome class, an awesome opportunity to pick out business teachings and papers from each part of the last 100 years. And I think the students coming out of that, you have a lot more appreciation for history and context, because I think what they don't teach today in business school is context. We have a lot of graduates coming out of school, whether it's undergrad or grad, who are taught this is how the world works. This is how, maximization of shareholder value. This is truth. This is not theory. And they go out there blind and they don't really understand how we got to where we are today. History allows us to do that. So I have a lot more appreciation for history. It's almost like a history of business class. And I would love to teach it here in New Mexico. We'll see if the University of New Mexico will one day have me as an adjunct, but teaching is a passion of mine, and I haven't been able to do it lately, but that class it's one of my favorites.
Interesting. What about what are within this context and framework? Talk about software as a service businesses.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to remember here, and I think it's worth mentioning, which is In our world, we have people who are like called specialists, where it's like if you do something, if you're in factories or industrial, you're considered a manufacturer or industrialist. If you're in food service, in distribution, you're like a food service distribution guy. If you're in software, you're a software guy. I'm a person who came out of industrial or B2B sort of government services and moved into software. And what I tell people is like selling software has advantages over other businesses for particular reasons, but the concept of delivering value for a cost or a service and delighting the customer is the same no matter what you do, whatever your business model is. So that's number one. Selling software or selling a widget, you're delivering value for a customer. So the concept is the same. Now, the benefits of software, what's interesting is that the two things that come to mind are the marginal cost of selling another customer on code you've already creating is zero. The more you sell, it has ability to generate more profit. And the second is the old way of doing waterfall development, where you're innovating. Innovation is a key part of any company. It was long development cycles, waterfall development cycles, where you were like working on stuff, printing the DVDs or CDs and shipping them out. And that was like the old model. Software as a service is this continuous model of innovation. If you do it correctly, not everyone does this. Some people interpret software as a service as being like, oh, now I can charge more, I can reduce service, and I can reduce innovation and make more money. That's not the right way to do it. The right way is I don't have to send you a disk every, you don't have to download something every year and this is the new version. It's a continuous process in which the customer tells us what they want. They say, hey, it would be great if you did these three things, or hey, wouldn't it be great if you did X? We take all that feedback and we incorporate it into our product development roadmap and we deliver it for the customer, and the customer is delighted. Not only do they have a better product, but they don't have to have their own IT staff either, which was part of the legacy system. Is you were implementing all this stuff, you had a whole IT group of people monitoring it and making sure it ran well. Now all that's been pushed onto the supplier. So from a customer standpoint, if you find your vendors, there's an opportunity to find vendors that will delight you, that will continue to find ways to create value, better, faster, cheaper, and you don't have to deal with any of the headaches. They're there to help you. That's the ideal world. Unfortunately, I would love to tell you that's what everybody does. That's not reality. Reality is there's a lot of people who are taking advantage. They're like, oh, you're on our system, you put all your data in here. Now I'm going to do a rent extraction model where I'm going to keep charging more price. You can't get your data out. You're stuck with us. Good luck. And I think that's just a bad way to do business. So we don't believe in that. We really believe that the two purposes of a business are to innovate and to really solve customer problems. Those core tenets guide us to use SaaS as a way to maximize our reason to be.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's why a lot of the old traditional industries they hate SaaS because it's so disruptive and it gets rid of their business model. It gets rid of the middlemen and the rent extractors. Next question I have for you is, where does artificial intelligence play into all this, and how are you thinking about it or using it or positioning yourself when you're for the aviation data group and also your Emberline portfolio company?
Yeah, great question and very topical. It's been amazing to see how AI can augment our existing team. I think a lot of folks like where are they taking the direction of AI? And for us, it's very much an augmentative opportunity where not only internally but externally for the customer. So where we're looking at it is where in the value stream is the customer spending a ton of time or a ton of pain that AI could sit on their shoulder or behind the scenes and help simplify the work that they're already doing. And that comes with, you get that benefit if you have customers for a long time, number one. And number two, you have customers that have a lot of data in your product. That's number two. If you don't have those things, AI is not really going to do anything, right? So, or not really going to help. It's just going to make you do more rework. And I think it's too much of a buzzword. For us, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of like busy work, administrative work for our customer cohorts in aviation maintenance is very high. They're
Mhm.
doing lots of paperwork. Great. AI can probably help reduce some of the friction there. So it's something that we're looking into. I would say it's not how we lead. I would say this is something that is worth pointing out. A lot of people are leading with AI. They should solve, those people who say that have other problems that are more basic than AI, where it's like, hey, maybe you should get this to integrate with something else. Or hey, maybe you should make it easier for someone to produce a report. you're talking about pie in the sky stuff before you're getting the base infrastructure in place. So for us, that comes first. So what we're really doing and really focusing on now is putting in foundational infrastructure first. And then when we're ready, or when the customer is ready, when everybody is ready, it's time to add in these other like cherries on top. We could call AI the cherry on top, but you can't lead with the cherry on top. You got to build your sundae first. For us, we see a ton of opportunity, but again, it's helping customers in the day to day and the blocking and tackling has been the priority number one. So it's still on the horizon for us, I would say, honestly.
Interesting. So we'll talk about the other question is acquiring and fixing businesses, and what do people get wrong about? What do most people get wrong about business?
Okay, great question. It's funny that you asked that. I think about this a ton because I do run into a lot of people who are like starry-eyed. Oh, it's going to be easy and great. I would say, I would say, uh, you can tell who's in the trenches and who's not a lot of times, as who's been through this process, because they stop talking like in this glorified everything's great language. They have a practical realism about them, about just the reality. It's someone said, I think someone probably wiser said, if you wanna get punched in the face every day, go buy a small business, right? And it's like that. It's just a lot of little things that can add up quick if you don't have the right systems in place, number one. And number two is a lot of people think that they are going to do everything. That's not how this works. If you want to do it right, you got to empower your team and develop your team to play the game. You're like the coach. The coach isn't on the field making the plays. The coach is like helping people orient around the ball, around the competition, right? The other team, and score points. That's your job as a leader. So, and I think a lot of people don't really understand that they're trying to do everything. So what happens is they do everything, they fail, they blow up, and then they say, okay, I have to reconfigure my life, and they reconfigure it around everybody else, and then they realize, oh, I don't have to do everything, and they back out. So you can find people who are, when they realize that, it's pretty powerful because now you can just develop more teams as a coach, and you're a team builder and a team pusher and a team empowerer, and you're not in the way anymore. So I find that's a big one. The second is a lot of people think it's easy to just go buy a business and it'll grow and you make money. It's not how it works. It's a lot of work, and especially it depends on what part of your life you're in. In your 20s, you don't really know anything. You're trying stuff out. In your 30s, you know a lot, but you don't really trust yourself. I would say in your 40s where I am, you know, and you trust that, and you can push things a little bit faster. We'll see what 50s is if I get there. But I would say, I think a lot of people just don't. You need to trust your gut. You need to trust experience, and it's a lot of work. And I think people forget when I taught investments at University of Portland. I told people Warren Buffett says the number one rule of investing is don't lose money, and then rule number two is see rule number one. And I tell people that's not right actually. And the number one rule of investing is don't die. That's the number one rule. A lot of people forget that. They blow themselves up. And you have to understand that you want to find opportunities where you're not going to blow up. So you can really do that by entering a market that's growing. Don't buy a business in a market that's in a downturn. Those, when you rent a car, they print those that print you sign the sheet, the contract on the carbon paper three-piece inkjet printer thing. There's a company in the United States that has like 50% market share that makes that paper, right? And I probably wouldn't buy that. There's another company that does the tickets for the airline in Texas. They make that special ticket with the blue and the green and all this funny stuff that you used to get on the plane. I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't buy that business either. Probably that business is going to be a big headache, right? So those are down. Don't do that. Buy a business in a growing market. Number two is find a business with lots of customers. If you find a business with one big customer, if you lose that customer, you could die. Don't do that. Go buy a business that's been around a long time with lots of customers. That's probably number two. And then number three is buy a business that has a good team, some redundancy, some processes. If you have a business where only one person knows how to do everything and that person leaves, that's not a good place to be. So it's like a little bit of basics here, but don't die is another one that people tend to forget. They get starry-eyed and they're like, oh, they convince themselves of things. I think that's another one. And I would say the last one, when I really know if someone's running a smaller business, I don't think this is actually true. It could be true in big business land too. There are things in business that you think only take a day or two to do. Or you're like, oh yeah, that takes a day. I'll call someone, I'll get it signed up, and we're done. It's like getting your company on health insurance. It's like getting a new payroll provider. It's like it should take a day. Reality is it takes 1 to 2 months to do any of these things. And if someone has never been in a business, you can tell because they're like, "Oh yeah, that's easy. That just takes a day." And you can say, and you immediately know this person has never spent a day in the life. They don't understand these things. There are all these little things that just keep never get done, and it's just because you're relying on this chain of people, and it's just inefficient by the design. So it just takes a long time. So that's a clear tell, if you will, when I talk to people and they're like, oh, yeah, that's easy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this person's never done it. They don't know. I think that's something people get wrong all the time because some of these things that I thought would take a day or 2 days or a week at most have literally taken like 2 months. That's another good one.
Yeah, really fascinating. And ended what I really loved was your original analogy of you can see who are the professional backpackers versus the amateurs, and what backpacking around the world twice can teach you about life and business, and how can people connect with you and see you as a and learn from you and work with you.
Okay, yeah. That's a great question, and I thought about it. I did the Colorado Trail for those interested. Those listeners that they have hiking boots are interested or hitting the trail. The best trail for 3 to 4 weeks is the Colorado Trail. It's the only one where I've encountered the triple crowners or like professional hikers that do it multiple times. They don't just do it one time, they do it over and over because it's the best trail. It's got lots of elevation gain, it's got amazing landscapes. I did the Annapurna circuit. I walked across Switzerland. I've trekked in the Shan state of Burma, and it's been good. I think hiking has taught me a couple things. Number one, I tell this to my team, which is it's amazing how high you can get in 15 minutes. You see the mountain and it's in front of you, and you say, that's a tall mountain. I'm never going to get over it. And that's like a business challenge where you go, I'm never going to be able to do this. It's too hard. It's amazing in 15 minutes when you look down how high you've walked up a trail. It continues to amaze me every time. Or I'm like, 15 minutes later, you look down and you go, oh, I'm actually super high. I've made a ton of ground. I can do this. And that initial momentum helps you climb the mountain. So that's number one. Number two, they say on the trail, hike your own hike is a saying out there on the trail. And it means different things for different people. But for me, what I take away from it is let people live their own life. You know what I mean? You're not going to change everyone's worldview. And this is one I got to keep reminding myself, which is I have my own perspective. Someone else has their own perspective. Hike your own hike. Do your own thing. You're going to hear naysayers in the peanut gallery tell you you're doing things wrong. That's great. Hike your own hike. Do your own thing. Worry about yourself. Like you're on your own path, your own journey. Don't worry about the peanut gallery. So hike your own hike is a good one because there's a lot of influences today that try to get us to do certain things that you should listen to your own inner monologue. That's probably number two. Number three is form alliances. Number three is forming alliances, and it's what I learned when I was out in India traveling around is you have you have guidebooks, you've looked on the internet, you see all this stuff, and you're like, you have a plan of what you're going to do. And I think that informs like 50% of your trail. The other 50% is formed by these alliances. You find other people like you or that you're interested in, and you form these groups. And two things come out of it. Number one, you have another group to share the experience with. But number two is they bring all the places that they just came from and tell you about them. And that sort of informs where you're going to go next. So there would be like these band of gypsies, these backpacker traveler types that I was at one point full time doing. You form these band of gypsies and you're going around and they tell you about all the cool spots of where they just come, where you might be going next. And then you can tell them about all the cool things you figured out where they're going next. And before you know it, you run into them again on the trail. It's funny how everyone just goes to Nepal, India, Burma, Thailand. It's like the Southeast Asian circuit, Laos. And you run into them and they go, oh, I went to that place and it was awesome. And that sort of forms a connection. And before you know it, now you're in alliance with them and you're going to decide where to go next. And it's cool how these things sort of form organically and you travel together and then you separate. And I think life's a little bit like that too. You have these stints where you're in a job or a career, you find people that can help you out or tell you about what's next, and that sort of informs where you're going to go next. In many ways, you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going backwards. You really set yourself up for success if you have these little alliances because they teach you things, help you out. So that's just one that you can take with you, with you on the road, put that in your pocket and on your way and make a friend. That's what I that's what I tell my team is go make some friends, right? Talk to people, ask them what they're doing, what's going on, and we try to do that too. So we instill that internally at the company as well. So I'd say those
Hmm.
are the top three major learnings you can take with you from the trail.
Yeah, excellent. And how can people connect with you and find you and work with you?
Easy. You can go to airworthy.com. Every week we write an insight piece. We're really deep in aviation maintenance. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, Jon McLaughlin, at either Emberline or airworthy.com, Aviation Data Group. And then Interra is also, if you're interested in wildfire and some of the work that we're doing in California and the West, which is, again, a huge passion of mine, which is making sure that we can keep people safe from wildfire. Been in that for a while. You can go to interragroup.com or interra.io, where you can see some of the work that we're doing around protecting Los Angeles, California, and the western states from this ever increasing threat of wildfire.
Excellent. Excellent. I really enjoyed your conversation, and you have a really interesting skill set and background and experience. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks. So hold on. Oh, let's see. Hold on. Settings.